The hallway was empty. Too empty for midnight, in a palace that never truly slept. Kate's footsteps echoed against the marble floors as she clutched the folder tighter to her chest. Her heart hammered so loud she was certain someone would hear it through the walls. She had worked at Kensington Palace for 3 years. 3 years of quietly organizing schedules, answering phones, and staying invisible. That was the job. Blend in. Don't ask questions. But tonight, everything had changed. The folder in her hands was never meant for her eyes. She had found it by accident, left open on a desk in the administrative wing. Just one glance at the first page had been enough. Names, dates, transfers of money that didn't match any official record. And at the bottom, a signature she recognized immediately. Kate's breath came faster now. The corridor stretched ahead, lined with portraits of people long dead, their painted eyes seeming to follow her movement. She needed to reach her office. She needed to think, but her legs felt weak. Her vision blurred at the edges. Something was wrong. She stopped walking and pressed a hand against the cold wall. The golden wallpaper felt rough under her fingertips. Her pulse was racing too fast. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chill in the air. Not now, she whispered to herself. Not now. But her body wasn't listening. The folder slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Papers scattered across the polished marble. Kate tried to bend down to gather them, but the world tilted violently. She stumbled forward. Her knees buckled. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was the ceiling spinning above, and the distant sound of footsteps rushing toward her. If you want to know what happens next, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the rest of Kate's story. You won't believe what she discovers. When Kate opened her eyes, she wasn't on the floor anymore. She was lying on a leather couch in a room she didn't recognize. The lighting was dim, just a single lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across mahogany furniture. Her head throbbed. Easy. Don't sit up too fast. The voice came from her left. Kate turned slowly and saw him, a guard. Mid-30s, dark uniform, calm expression. He was crouched beside the couch, watching her carefully. You collapsed, he said simply. In the east hallway, Kate's mind raced. The folder. The papers. She tried to sit up despite his warning, panic flooding through her. Where are my things? The guard didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on hers. You mean these? He reached behind him and lifted the folder into view. All the papers were back inside, neatly stacked. Kate's stomach dropped. He had seen everything. Who are you? She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. My name is Daniel, he said, and I think you and I need to talk. Kate's throat went dry. This was it. She had been caught. In minutes, she would be escorted out. Maybe worse. Her career, her life, everything she had worked for, gone because of one terrible mistake. But Daniel didn't call for backup. He didn't reach for his radio. Instead, he set the folder down on the coffee table between them and leaned back slightly. How long have you known? He asked quietly. Kate blinked. Known what? About the money. The transfers. The names in that folder. Her heart skipped. He wasn't asking like a guard. He was asking like someone who already knew the answer. I just found it tonight, Kate said carefully. I wasn't looking for it. It was just there. Daniel studied her face for a long moment, as if deciding whether to believe her. Then he nodded slowly. Then you're in more danger than you realize, he said. Because the person whose name is on those documents, they know someone's been asking questions, and they're not the forgiving type. Kate felt ice slide down her spine. What are you talking about? Daniel glanced toward the door, then back at her. His voice dropped even lower. I've been investigating this for 6 months. Quietly. Carefully. And you just walked right into the middle of it. Kate stared at Daniel, trying to process his words. Investigating. 6 months. This wasn't some random guard who had stumbled upon her. This was someone who had been digging into the same darkness she had just uncovered. You're not just a guard, are you? She asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. Am. But I'm also someone who couldn't ignore what I was seeing. Money disappearing from restoration funds. Invoices for work that was never done. It all looked legitimate on paper, but the numbers didn't add up. He opened the folder and pulled out one of the documents. His finger traced a line of text near the bottom. This transfer here. £200,000 for historical preservation consultation. Except there's no record of any consultant ever visiting. No reports filed. No work completed. He looked up at her. That money went somewhere, and someone made sure it vanished without a trace. Kate's mouth felt dry. She had only seen the first few pages before collapsing. She hadn't understood the full scope of what she was holding. Think how much, she whispered, over the past 3 years. Close to £4 million? The number hung in the air between them like a weight. 4 million. Stolen from funds meant to preserve history, to protect heritage, and hidden so carefully that no one had noticed. No one except Daniel. Why are you telling me this? Kate asked, her voice shaking slightly. You could have just taken the folder and pretended you never saw me. Daniel sat back, his expression unreadable. Because you collapsed. And when I checked your pulse, I noticed something. He gestured toward her wrist. Kate looked down and saw the medical alert bracelet she always wore, the one that listed her heart condition, the one she kept hidden under long sleeves most days because she didn't want people to treat her differently. You're sick, Daniel said, not unkindly. And you still came to work tonight? Why? Kate hesitated. She didn't owe this man an explanation, but something in his eyes made her want to trust him. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the simple fact that she had no one else. They asked me to, she said quietly. My supervisor. She said there were files that needed organizing before a big audit next week. She said it was urgent. Daniel's expression darkened. Who asked you? Margaret? Margaret Ashford. She's the senior administrator for I Know Who She Is. Daniel's voice had gone cold. He stood up abruptly and began pacing the small room. Margaret asked you specifically? Yes, she called me this afternoon. Said she needed someone reliable. Someone discreet. Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face her. Kate, listen to me very carefully. Margaret Ashford's name is all over these documents. She's been signing off on fake invoices for 2 years. Kate felt the room tilt again. No, that couldn't be right. Margaret was strict, yes, but she was dedicated. She had worked at the palace for over a decade. She was the person everyone trusted to keep things running smoothly. You're wrong, Kate said, shaking her head. Margaret would never. She sent you here tonight because she knew someone was getting close. Daniel interrupted. She needed a scapegoat. Someone to blame if the investigation came to light. The words hit Kate like a punch to the chest. A scapegoat. That's what she was. That's why Margaret had called her specifically. Kate was junior staff. Quiet, forgettable, and sick. If something went wrong, who would believe her over a senior administrator with 10 years of spotless service? Oh God, Kate breathed. She set me up. Daniel nodded grimly. And if I had been anyone else, any other Gardude already be in custody right now. They'd have found you unconscious with stolen documents, and that would have been the end of it. Kate's hands trembled. She pressed them against her knees to steady herself. What do? You stay quiet. You go home. You pretend tonight never happened? What? Kate looked up at him, stunned. You want me to just walk away? I want you to stay safe, Daniel said firmly. This is bigger than you realize. If Margaret knows you've seen these files, she'll bury you. And I can't protect you if you become a target. You need evidence, don't you? Kate's mind was racing now, pushing past the fear. You said you've been investigating for 6 months. If Margaret set me up, that means she's panicking. That means you're close. Daniel said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Kate stood up, ignoring the dizziness that washed over her. I work in her office. I have access to her files, her computer, her schedule. If you need proof, I can get it. Absolutely not. Daniel stepped forward, his voice sharp. You have a heart condition, Kate. You just collapsed in a hallway. Do you have any idea what kind of stress this will put on you? I'm not fragile, Kate shot back. and I'm not going to let her use me as a shield while she gets away with this. The two of them stood facing each other in the dim light. Outside, the palace was silent. But inside this room, a decision was being made that would change everything. Finally, Daniel exhaled slowly. If we do this, we do it my way. You follow my instructions exactly? No improvising. No heroics. Kate nodded. Agreed. And if at any point I think you're in danger, we stop. Immediately, okay? Daniel studied her for another long moment, then extended his hand. Then we're partners. Kate shook it, feeling the weight of what she had just agreed to settle over her. She was about to go up against someone powerful, someone who had been stealing for years without getting caught. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to destroy anyone who stood in her way. But as she looked at Daniel, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. She wasn't alone in this anymore. The next morning, Kate arrived at work exactly on time. Not early, not late. She couldn't appear too eager or too nervous. Everything had to look normal. The administrative wing was already bustling. Phones rang. Keyboards clicked. People moved between offices carrying folders and coffee cups, their faces showing the usual mix of Monday. Morning exhaustion and determination. Kate hung her coat on the rack near her desk and powered on her computer. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Margaret's face. Heard her voice on the phone, asking Kate to come in after hours, asking her to be the fall guy. Good morning, Kate. Margaret stood in the doorway of her office, perfectly put together as always. Gray suit, pearl earrings, hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like someone who had never told a lie in her life. Good morning, Margaret, Kate replied, keeping her voice light. How did the filing go last night? Were you able to finish? Kate's throat tightened. This was a test. Margaret was checking to see if Kate suspected anything. Most of it, Kate said carefully. I had to leave a bit early. Wasn't feeling well. Margaret's expression shifted to concern. Oh dear, nothing serious, I hope. Just tired. I'm fine now, but don't push yourself too hard. We need you healthy. Margaret smiled warmly, then gestured to her office. Would you mind bringing me the Henderson file when you have a moment? I need to review it before my 10 o'clock meeting, of course. Margaret disappeared back into her office, and Kate exhaled slowly. She had passed the first test. Margaret didn't know that Kate had seen the documents. She didn't know about Daniel. As far as Margaret was concerned, everything was going according to plan. Kate opened her desk drawer and pulled out her phone. There was a text from an unknown number. She knew who it was. Be careful. Trust no one. She deleted the message and got back to work. The morning crawled by. Kate answered emails, filed reports, and brought Margaret the Henderson file without incident. But every time Margaret called her into the office, every time she asked Kate to handle a task, Kate felt the weight of what she knew pressing down on her. At lunch, Kate left the building and walked to a small cafe 3 blocks away. Daniel was already there, sitting in the back corner with a newspaper in front of him. He didn't look up when she approached. Kate ordered a tea and sat down at the table next to his, angling her chair so they weren't facing each other directly. To anyone watching, they were strangers. She doesn't suspect anything, Kate said quietly, stirring her tea. Shh. Good. Daniel turned a page of his newspaper. Did you get access to her computer? Not yet. She's been in her office all morning. Tonight, then. After everyone leaves, Kate hesitated. What if she's there late again? She won't be. She has a dinner engagement with the deputy director at 7. I checked her calendar. Kate felt a chill. You can access her calendar? I can access a lot of things, Daniel said simply. But I need physical proof. Something that connects her directly to the missing funds. Bank statements, emails, anything that can't be explained away. Kate took a sip of her tea, thinking. Her computer is password protected. I know. That's why you're going to use this. Daniel slid a small USB drive across the table. It stopped just short of Kate's saucer. Plug it in. It'll bypass the login and copy everything on her hard drive. Takes about 3 minutes. Kate stared at the device. It looked so ordinary. Just a black USB stick, no bigger than her thumb. But what it represented was enormous. If she used it, she would be committing a crime. Breaking into Margaret's computer, stealing files. There would be no going back from that. What if I get caught? She asked. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he folded his newspaper and looked at her directly for the first time. His eyes were serious. Then you tell them I forced you to do it. You say I threatened you. You give them my name, and you walk away. Daniel, I mean it, Kate. If this goes wrong, I take the fall. Not you. Kate met his gaze. She saw the determination there. But she also saw something else. Wariness. He had been carrying this alone for 6 months. Watching, waiting, gathering pieces of evidence, while pretending everything was normal. It had taken a toll on him. No one's taking the fall, Kate said firmly. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. The corner of Daniel's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. You're stubborn, you know that? So I've been told. He stood up, leaving money on the table for his coffee. 7:30 tonight. East entrance. I'll make sure the cameras are off in that corridor for exactly 5 minutes. That's all the time you'll have. Kate pocketed the USB drive. I'll be ready. Daniel walked out without another word. Kate finished her tea slowly, forcing herself to appear calm. But inside, her mind was racing. Tonight, she would cross a line. Tonight, she would become more than just a witness. She would become part of the investigation. And if Daniel was right about Margaret, she would also become a target. When Kate returned to the office, she found Margaret standing at her desk looking through Kate's drawers. Margaret. Kate's voice came out sharper than she intended. Can I help you with something? Margaret straightened up, not looking the least bit embarrassed. I was looking for the Maurice contract. I thought you might have filed it here by mistake. It's in the cabinet. 3rd drawer, under M. Ah, of course. Thank you, dear. Margaret smiled, but her eyes were cold. You seem tense. Are you sure you're feeling all right? Kate forced herself to breathe normally. Just a long day. We'll try to relax. Stress isn't good for someone with your condition. The words hung in the air like a threat. Kate's medical bracelet suddenly felt tight around her wrist. Margaret knew. She had always known. That's why she had chosen Kate, because Kate was vulnerable. Because Kate could be controlled. But what Margaret didn't know was that Kate was done being afraid. I'll keep that in mind, Kate said evenly. Margaret nodded and walked back to her office. But as she passed, Kate caught the briefest flicker of something in her expression. Suspicion. Doubt. Margaret wasn't certain anymore, and that made her dangerous. Kate sat down at her desk and opened her email. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart rate stayed steady. She had made her decision. Tonight she would find the proof. And Margaret Ashford's perfect facade would finally crack. Asterisk, the hours dragged. Kate watched the clock on her computer screen tick forward with agonizing slowness. 5 o'clock came and went. Staff began filtering out, calling goodbyes to each other as they headed home to their families. Margaret left at 6:45, exactly as Daniel had predicted. She stopped at Kate's desk on her way out. Don't stay too late, Margaret said pleasantly. You need your rest. I won't. Just finishing up a few things. Margaret's eyes lingered on Kate's face for a moment too long. Then she nodded and left, her heels clicking against the marble floor until the sound faded into silence. Kate waited. She forced herself to keep working to appear absorbed in her tasks. The cleaning staff came through at 7, emptying bins and wiping down surfaces. Kate smiled at them and kept typing. By 7:20, the administrative wing was empty. The only sounds were the hum of the air conditioning and the distant murmur of voices from other parts of the palace. Kate's shift didn't officially end until 8, so no one would question why she was still there. She stood up and walked to the bathroom, checking her reflection in the mirror. She looked pale but calm. Her medical bracelet caught the light. She touched it briefly, feeling the engraved letters under her fingertips. This was for every person Margaret had stolen from. Every fund that had been emptied, Every restoration project that had been canceled because the money had vanished. Kate left the bathroom, made her way to Margaret's office. The door was closed, but not locked. Margaret never locked it during business hours, confident that no one would dare enter without permission. Kate slipped inside and closed the door behind her. The office was immaculate. Dark wood desk, leather chair, a bookshelf lined with administrative manuals and historical texts, a window overlooking the gardens. Everything in its place. Everything perfect? Kate moved to the desk and pressed the power button on Margaret's computer. The screen flickered to life, displaying a login prompt. Kate pulled the USB drive from her pocket and held it for a moment, her heart pounding. This was it. No turning back. She inserted the drive. The screen went black. Lines of code began scrolling past, too fast to read. Kate held her breath, counting in her head. Daniel had said 3 minutes. She watched the clock in the corner of the screen. 1 minute passed. Then 2. A floorboard creaked outside the office. Kate froze. Her hand moved instinctively to the USB drive, ready to pull it out. But if she did that now, the transfer would fail. She would have nothing. The doorknob began to turn. Kate's mind raced. She couldn't hide. She couldn't explain. If someone walked in right now, the door swung open. Daniel stood in the doorway. His uniform was perfectly pressed, his expression neutral. Behind him, the corridor was empty. "Guard check," he said loudly, his voice carrying. Then, quieter. 30 seconds. Kate looked at the screen. The progress bar showed 87%. Daniel stepped inside and closed the door, positioning himself in front of it. "Anyone asks, I'm escorting you out because you were working after hours without clearance," he said under his breath. "Thank you," Kate whispered. The progress bar hit 100%. The screen flashed, and the code disappeared, replaced by Margaret's desktop. Kate yanked the USB drive out and shut down the computer. Daniel opened the door and gestured for her to follow. "This way, please." Kate grabbed her bag and walked out, keeping her eyes down. They moved through the corridor together, Daniel slightly ahead, playing the role of the stern guard and the rule-breaking employee. Anyone watching would see exactly what they were supposed to see. They reached the east entrance. Daniel held the door open, and Kate stepped out into the cool evening air. The moment the door closed behind them, she exhaled. "Did you get it?" Daniel asked. Kate held up the USB drive. Everything. For the first time since she'd met him, Daniel smiled. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. "You did good, now what?" "Now we see what's on that drive. I have a secure laptop at my flat. We can review everything there." Kate hesitated. Going to his apartment felt like another line to cross. But what choice did she have? She couldn't take this home. She couldn't risk anyone finding it. "Okay," she said. They walked to the street and caught a taxi. Neither of them spoke during the ride. Kate stared out the window, watching London blur past, feeling the USB drive like a hot coal in her pocket. Daniel's flat was small but tidy. 1 bedroom, a narrow kitchen, a living room with a couch and a desk covered in papers. He cleared the desk quickly, then pulled out a laptop from a locked drawer and powered it on. Kate handed him the drive. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. Daniel noticed. "Sit down," he said gently. "I'll make tea. I don't need. Sit down." Kate sat. A few minutes later, Daniel returned with 2 mugs and set one in front of her. The tea was strong and sweet. She wrapped her hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. Daniel inserted the USB drive and began opening files. Kate watched his face as he scanned through documents, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. "What is it?" Kate asked. She was careful. Most of the transactions are buried in legitimate expenses. But there's a folder here labeled personal. He clicked it open. Encrypted. "Can you break it?" "Maybe it'll take time." Kate set down her tea and moved to stand behind him. The screen showed a list of files, each one locked behind a password. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. She wouldn't keep evidence of her crimes on her work computer, Kate said slowly. Unless she needed access to it. Quick access. Daniel leaned back in his chair. She's been stealing for years. She'd need records. Account numbers. Transactions. If she encrypted it well enough, she'd think it was safe. So we just need the password. Daniel shook his head. We need someone who can crack encryption. Someone discreet. Someone who won't ask questions. Do you know anyone like that? He was quiet for a moment. Then, I might. But it's risky. If we bring in someone else, we lose control of the information. Kate understood what he was really saying. Every person they involved was another person who could betray them. Another person Margaret could get to. What if we don't need to crack it? Kate said suddenly. What if we can get Margaret to open it herself? Daniel turned to look at her. What are you thinking? She's paranoid right now. She sent me after hours to set me up, which means she knows someone's getting close. If we make her think the investigation is closing in from a different direction, she might panic. She might access those files to cover her tracks or move the money. And if she does... The plan began the next morning. Kate arrived at work early and made sure to be in the break room when other staff arrived. She sat at a table with her tea, pretending to read something on her phone. 2 administrators from the finance department came in, talking about their weekend. Kate waited until they were pouring coffee, then spoke just loud enough to be heard. Did you hear about the audit? She asked Sarah, one of the junior accountants. Sarah looked confused. What audit? Kate lowered her voice, as if sharing something she wasn't supposed to know. I overheard Margaret on the phone yesterday. Something about an external review. Financial records going back 3 years? The 2 administrators stopped talking. One of them turned. External? That's unusual. Kate shrugged. I don't know the details. I probably wasn't supposed to hear it. Just thought it was strange timing. She stood up and left the break room, feeling their eyes on her back. By lunchtime, the rumor would be everywhere. And by the end of the day, it would reach Margaret. Kate spent the morning working, forcing herself to stay focused. Every time Margaret called her into the office, her heart raced. But Margaret was distracted, constantly checking her phone, making hushed phone calls with her door closed. It was working. The seed of doubt had been planted. At 2 o'clock, Kate's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Guards are talking. She's heard. Kate deleted the message and got back to work. By 4 o'clock, the tension in the office was palpable. Margaret had been in and out of her office all day, her usual composure cracking at the edges. She snapped at someone over a minor filing error. She spilled coffee on her desk and cursed under her breath. Kate watched it all from her desk, her stomach tight with nerves. At 5:30, Margaret appeared at Kate's desk. Her face was pale, her jaw set. I need you to stay late tonight, Margaret said. There are files I need you to organize. It's urgent. Kate kept her expression neutral. Of course. How late? 7 should be fine. Maybe 8. I'll be working late as well. Kate nodded. No problem. Margaret walked away and Kate immediately texted Daniel. She wants me to stay late. She's going to be here. The response came back quickly. Stick to the plan. I'll be watching. The next 2 hours crawled by. Staff left one by one until Kate and Margaret were the only ones remaining in the administrative wing. The silence was oppressive. Kate could hear Margaret moving around in her office, opening drawers, shuffling papers, at 7:15. Margaret's door opened. She walked to Kate's desk, her movements stiff and controlled. I need to step out for 20 minutes, Margaret said. Personal matter. If anyone asks, tell them I'll be back shortly. Kate nodded. Of course. Margaret grabbed her coat and left. The moment she was gone, Kate's phone buzzed. She's heading to the financial wing. Move now. Kate stood up and walked quickly to Margaret's office. The computer was still on the screen showing Margaret's email. Kate moved to the side of the desk where she couldn't be seen from the door and waited. Her heart hammering. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Kate's phone buzzed again. She's accessing something. Stand by. Kate held her breath. She could hear footsteps in the corridor outside. Distant voices. Her palms were sweating. Another text. She opened the encrypted folder. I got the password. Get out of there, now. Kate moved toward the door but froze. She could hear Margaret's heels clicking against the marble floor, getting closer. She was coming back. Kate looked around desperately. She couldn't leave through the door without being seen. The window didn't open. There was nowhere to hide except she dropped to her knees and crawled under the desk. Pressing herself into the small space beneath, her bag clutched to her chest. The door opened. Margaret's footsteps entered the room. Kate held her breath, making herself as small as possible. Margaret sat down at the desk. The chair rolled forward. Kate could see Margaret's legs just inches from her face, could hear her breathing. Margaret picked up the phone and dialed. "It's me. We have a problem." Kate didn't move, didn't breathe. "Someone knows," Margaret continued, her voice tight. "I don't know how, but someone's been asking questions. I need to move the accounts tonight." "Yes, all of them." There was a pause. Kate could hear the muffled voice on the other end of the line but couldn't make out the words. "I don't care about the risk," Margaret snapped. "If there's an audit, if they dig deep enough, it's over. I'm transferring everything to the offshore account. By morning, there won't be a trace." Another pause. Margaret's foot tapped against the floor nervously. "The girl?" Margaret laughed, but there was no humor in it. "She's harmless, sick, weak. I've been watching her. She doesn't have the spine for anything like this. She's just collateral if I need her." Kate felt cold rage wash over her. Collateral. That's all she was to Margaret. A convenient scapegoat. "I'll handle it," Margaret said. "Just make sure the account is ready to You'll be watching. You can see what the password is. You can copy everything before she realizes what's happening." Daniel studied her face. "That's smart, but it's also dangerous. If she suspects you're involved, she'll come after you. She'll already suspect something. You saw the way she looked at me today. I'm already in danger." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, thinking, "We'd need to plant the right information. Make her believe there's an audit coming. Maybe a surprise inspection. I can do that. I can mention it casually. Say I overheard something. And I can make sure rumors start circulating among the guards. Nothing concrete. Just enough to make her nervous." Kate felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. This could work. It had to work. They were so close now. But as she looked at Daniel, she saw the worry in his eyes. He was afraid for her. And maybe he had good reason to be. "I'll handle it," Margaret said. "Just make sure the account is ready to receive the funds. I'll initiate the transfer within the hour." And she hung up. Kate heard the computer keys clicking. Margaret was working, her attention focused on the screen above. Kate knew she had to move. If she stayed here much longer, Margaret would notice her bag on the floor, or see her feet, or sense that something was wrong. But if she moved now, Margaret would hear her. She was trapped. Her phone buzzed in her bag. The sound was tiny, but in the dead silence of the office, it might as well have been a gunshot. Margaret's typing stopped. What was that? Kate's heart stopped. Margaret's chair rolled back. She was standing up. She was going to look under the desk. The door burst open. "Ms. Ashford, we need you in the director's office immediately." Daniel stood in the doorway, his face serious, his posture official. Behind him, Kate could see two other guards. Margaret spun around. "What? Why?" "There's been a security incident. They need all senior staff present. It's urgent." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "What kind of incident?" "I'm not at liberty to say, ma'am. But the director insisted, everyone, now." Margaret looked back at her computer, clearly torn. Then she grabbed her phone and walked toward the door. "This better be important." "Yes, ma'am." They left. Kate heard their footsteps fade down the corridor. She waited 30 seconds, then crawled out from under the desk, her legs shaking. She stood up and looked at Margaret's computer. The screen showed a banking interface. Account numbers. Transfer amounts. Everything. Kate pulled out her phone and took photos. Screen after screen, capturing every detail. Then she heard voices in the hallway. They were coming back. Kate ran. She left Margaret's office and headed for the east exit. not caring who saw her, not caring about anything except getting away. She burst through the door and into the night air, gasping. Daniel appeared beside her seconds later. "Are you okay?" Kate nodded, unable to speak. She held up her phone, showing him the photos. Daniel's eyes widened. "You got it. You actually got it. She's transferring the money tonight. Within the hour. We have to stop her." Daniel pulled out his radio. "Then we call it in. Right now, we give everything to the authorities and let them handle it." Kate grabbed his arm. "What if they don't believe us? What if she has connections? She's been doing this for years, Daniel. She has to have people protecting her." Daniel looked at her, and she saw the same fear in his eyes that she felt. They were taking on someone powerful, someone who had evaded detection for so long that she'd grown arrogant. "Then we make sure they can't ignore us," Daniel said. "We go to the press. We make it public. She can't bury it if everyone knows." Kate nodded. "Do it." Daniel made the call. Within minutes, they were joined by 2 investigative journalists Daniel trusted. Within an hour, the story was out. Within 2 hours, the police arrived at the palace, and Margaret Ashford's perfect world began to crumble. The palace was chaos. Police cars lined the street, their blue lights casting strange shadows across the ancient stone walls. Journalists crowded behind barriers, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions that no one answered. Kate sat in a conference room with Daniel, 2 detectives and a palace representative. They had been there for 3 hours, going through everything. The documents, the photos, the encrypted files that Daniel had managed to crack, every piece of evidence they had gathered. Margaret had been arrested at 8:30. She was trying to leave through a service entrance with 2 suitcases and a laptop. She had said nothing except to demand her lawyer, but the evidence spoke for itself. £4 million stolen over 3 years? Fake invoices. Ghost contractors. Money funneled through a network of offshore accounts. And Margaret's fingerprints on every single transaction. "You took an enormous risk," Detective Morris said. Looking at Kate, she was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes. "What you did was technically illegal. Breaking into a computer, stealing files." Kate met her gaze steadily. "I know, but if we hadn't, she would have gotten away with it. She was going to disappear tonight with all the money." Detective Maurice nodded slowly. "You're right. And because of that, we're not going to press charges. But you understand you can never do anything like this again." "Yes, ma'am." The detective turned to Daniel. "And you. 6 months of investigating without telling anyone. You could have lost your job. Why didn't you go through proper channels?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I tried. I filed a report 3 months ago. It was buried. Someone in administration made sure it never reached the right people. Who? I don't know. But Margaret had help. Someone was protecting her." The detective made a note. "We'll look into it. In the meantime, both of you are going to need to testify when this goes to trial." Kate nodded. The weight of what they had done was starting to settle on her. It wasn't over. Margaret would fight. There would be lawyers, depositions, media attention. Kate's life would be dissected. Her health, her background, her motivations, everything. But as she looked at Daniel, she felt no regret. They had done the right thing. They had stopped someone who thought she was untouchable. The detective stood up. "You're free to go, but don't leave the city. We'll be in touch." Kate and Daniel walked out of the palace together. It was past midnight now. The journalists were still there, but fewer of them. The story had already broken online. Kate had seen the headlines on her phone. "Palace administrator arrested for embezzlement. £4 million theft exposed. Whistleblowers uncover massive fraud. Are you okay?" Daniel asked as they stood on the steps. Kate took a deep breath. The air was cold and clean. She felt exhausted but also strangely light, as if a weight she hadn't known she was carrying had been lifted. "I'm okay," she said. "Are you?" Daniel smiled. "I will be. Thanks to you, we did it together." "Yeah, we did." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the police cars begin to leave. Then Kate's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Her mother should take this, Kate said. She's probably seen the news. Go. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Kate answered the call and started walking toward the street. Her mother's voice was frantic, asking if she was safe, if she was hurt, what had happened. Kate explained as much as she could, her words tumbling out in a rush. She didn't notice the car until it was too late. It came around the corner too fast. Tires screeching. Kate looked up just as the headlights blinded her. She heard Daniel shout her name. She felt hands grab her arm and yank her backward. The car sped past. Missing her by inches and disappeared into the night, Kate stood on the sidewalk, her heart pounding, her phone lying on the ground where she had dropped it. Daniel was beside her, his hand still gripping her arm. Did you see the license plate? Daniel asked, his voice tight. Kate shook her head. She was trembling now, the adrenaline flooding through her system. Was that on purpose? Daniel didn't answer. He pulled out his phone and called Detective Maurice. 20 minutes later, they were back in the conference room. The detective looked grim. The car was reported stolen 2 hours ago, she said. We're checking traffic cameras, but I think we both know what this means. Someone tried to kill her, Daniel said flatly.
Oh.
Or scare her. Either way, you're both in danger. Margaret had partners. We've identified at least 2 other people involved in the scheme. Until we bring them in, you need protection. Protection? Kate repeated. Like what? A bodyguard? More like a safe house. Somewhere off the grid. Just for a few days while we round up the remaining suspects. Kate looked at Daniel. He nodded. It's the smart move. Kate wanted to argue. She wanted to say she wasn't afraid, that she could handle herself. But the truth was, she was terrified. That car had been seconds away from hitting her. If Daniel hadn't pulled her back. Okay, Kate said quietly. Whatever you think is best. They were driven to a small flat in North London. 2 officers stood guard outside. Inside, it was sparse but clean. A couch, a television, a small kitchen. Kate sat down and put her head in her hands. I'm sorry, Daniel said. This is my fault. I should have known they'd come after you. This isn't your fault. Margaret made her choices. Her partners made theirs. We just exposed them. You almost died tonight. Kate looked up at him. But I didn't. We got them. That's what matters. Daniel sat down beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Kate felt his hand cover hers. You're the bravest person I've ever met, he said quietly. Kate felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been holding everything together for so long, the fear, the stress, the constant vigilance. But now, in this quiet room with Daniel beside her, she finally let herself feel it all. I was so scared, she whispered. I know. Me too. They sat together in the dim light, 2 people who had been strangers a week ago and were now bound together by everything they had been through. Outside, the city carried on. Police hunted for Margaret's accomplices. Journalists wrote their stories. The palace began the work of damage control and reform. But in that small flat, Kate and Daniel simply sat and breathed and were grateful to be alive. 3 days later, the remaining suspects were arrested. Margaret's partner, a financial consultant named Richard Price, tried to flee the country but was caught at Heathrow. The third accomplice, a junior accountant, turned himself in and agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. The case was ironclad. Margaret would spend years in prison. The stolen money would be recovered. Reforms would be put in place to prevent anything like this from happening again. Kate returned to work 2 weeks later. She had a new position now in the Inspector General's office. Her job was to review financial controls and ensure transparency. It was important work that mattered. Daniel was promoted to Senior Security Officer. He was tasked with implementing new protocols, new safeguards. They still met for tea sometimes, in that same cafe where they had planned their investigation. They talked about work, about their lives, about the trial that was coming. But mostly, they talked about the future. About the possibility of a world where people like Margaret couldn't hide in the shadows, where ordinary people like Kate and Daniel could make a difference. It wasn't a perfect world. It wasn't even always a fair one, but it was theirs, and they had fought for it. On a cold morning, 6 months after Margaret's arrest, Kate stood in front of the palace and looked up at its ancient walls. She thought about all the history contained within those stones, all the secrets, all the power, and she smiled, because she had learned something important. Power wasn't about titles or positions. It wasn't about money or influence. Real power was standing up when everyone expected you to stay silent. It was choosing courage over safety. It was believing that one person, even someone weak and sick and ordinary, could change things. Kate touched her medical bracelet, feeling the familiar weight of it against her wrist. Then she walked through the palace doors, ready for whatever came next. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was ready.